for quite a while, it was everything I wanted. He was an actual being that could help me understand like why I'm here on this planet. And because I had only been trained to follow, I followed blindly. And I wasn't able to see the red flags that were part of this whole like happy picture.
Welcome everybody to Spirituality. If you're new here, my name is Kat and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant, and I am so pleased and excited to have joining me today Nadia Fairlamb, who is a professional artist and art therapy facilitator. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Nadia.
Of course, yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Can you start off a little bit by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. A professional artist, so I grew up as one of those kids that was literally always drew and painted on the wall. I had a lot of energy as a child, and it always came out visually, creatively. And my little being was always curious about why am I here? And my father, being a military guy, had no mental or emotional capacity for that growing up with the paradigm that he grew up with. Dad was always a bit confused and just was constantly suppressing my emotions because I had a lot of big emotions. I'm a water sign. Actually, I'm a triple water. Cancer, Pisces. So there's lots and lots of emotions and moons in my side. And I was trained as a child that whenever I had strong emotions, to suppress them. Whenever I had strong curiosities about why was I born? What am I here to do? I know I have a purpose, a soul's purpose, and I would ask my family, what am I to do? And of course, they didn't have the answers. They didn't know how to have the answers. And all of that questioning and that curiosity, it led me to a lot of different places. I got a bachelor's degree in fine arts and archaeology and explored a lot of different pagan esoteric things when I was in college. And that eventually led, I think the pivot point, the turning point in my life is when I was in my early 30s. I got married to my long-term boyfriend at the time. If you live in a military family, you go wherever dad takes you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was used to. And so I met a man and I did whatever he said and moved wherever he wanted to go. And when the marriage ended, I did not know how to lead myself. I didn't know how to choose. I didn't know how to stand up for my own voice. I knew I wanted to be creative, but I had no idea how to guide my own next step. So in that moment of my life, I definitely cried out for guidance and instruction. And it was at that point that I met a spiritual teacher, a meditation teacher, a guru, if you want to call it. And for quite a while, it was everything I wanted. He was an actual being that could help me understand like why I'm here on this planet. Why did I incarnate? Why did I take on a body? What is my life's purpose? And because I had only been trained to follow, I followed blindly. And I wasn't able to see the red flags that were part of this whole like happy picture. And so I was with a spiritual teacher for over a decade, and over a period of time, there were a lot of red flags and warning signs that I pushed away and I pushed down that I didn't want to hear, blah, 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 because if I saw what they were and if I listened to what was going on, again, I would then have to step out and lead myself.
Right.
And I didn't know how. At no point in my life was I ever given that self-leadership capability. It was follow, 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 you know. And so my youth and my childhood was kind of like the perfect cake mix, all the different ingredients put together in a bowl to be a good disciple, you know.
Right.
And so I became a very good disciple, and I followed until my body put the brakes on, until I started having panic attacks.
Yeah.
So mentally and emotionally, I wasn't able to comprehend all the red flags and all the things that weren't okay being part of a spiritual group, which now I can confidently say, oh, I was kind of in a cult. and
Yeah.
But at the time, my body was indicating that something was off. So the body has a language, and the body's way speaks through sensation and emotion. As a child, I was taught to suppress my emotions and not understand them. Of course, socially, we're taught to do that. And if we're not taught to dialogue with our emotions and to understand, like, this thing that wants to scream out of me right now, the body then has to express it as an actual vibration. So now I know that panic attacks are the body's way to shake off unwanted vibrations, because panic attacks are very energetically loaded. There's a lot of vibration to them. There's a lot of tears. There's a lot of uncontrollable emotion that erupts out of the physical form. And so I would have panic attacks all the time, every day. And I would keep suppressing them. But at one point, it was so bad, I disassociated and I left my body. And I saw my body almost in a death state. It wasn't dying, but I knew as I left my body and saw my body laying on the ground, I knew that that was my body's way of saying, I've now kicked you out and I'm in total control because you're not listening to me. And if you don't listen to me, things are going to get really, really bad. And it was at that point that I was able to understand, like, oh, wait a second, my body is talking to me here. And it's trying to tell me something really important and I don't know how to listen. And I realized at that point, and I started to listen and I started to look around and I started to ask myself questions like, I don't like this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to follow this person anymore. A lot of the dogma that happens in many spiritual groups, and honestly, I'll say any religious group, any strong religious structure where there's a charismatic leader, any strong cultural structure where there's a charismatic leader, any strong political structure where there's a charismatic leader, where people follow blindly, there's always a knock-on effect to that. That person that follows blindly, that bill is going to have to be paid at some point with their body. So my body was telling me, please pay attention. And so I started paying attention and I listened and I paid attention to what was going around me and the environment and the small, inclusive, cut off environment that this narcissistic spiritual leader had created to keep us into a state of control. And I realized, and I started asking myself questions. Do I like this, and this, and this? Do I see myself living this way for the next 5-10 years? And the answer was no. And so the next question I asked myself was, how the hell do I get out? What do I do? How do I lead myself out of this? Some part of me was able to listen to my body. I don't know how, but I started listening to what my body was saying and I followed my body. And some part of me that was the artist, the anthropologist, some part of me that has this living, breathing, intelligent being that is my body said, listen to me, I gotcha. Just follow what I do. And I just followed. It's like, body, are we going to go this way or this way? Go that way. Okay. Are we going to pack today or are we going to stay? We're going to pack. Okay. And I just listened and watched and followed my body. And eventually I got out. And eventually those same urges that I listened to led me to the people that led me to the right kinds of therapy to heal my body, which led me to the right kind of mentors where I could start asking myself the questions of, well, how do I lead myself now? Because I'm sure as F not going to follow anymore. I followed enough, and look at where that got me. In a cult, completely cut off from the world. It's a movie. If anybody wants to watch this thing, it's literally on Netflix and Wikipedia, and we can put it out. And it's called Holy Hell. And a bunch of the members of this group made a movie about it, and I'm in it, so you'll see me. And we look crazy, and nobody asked us permission to take this private footage of us and blast it all over Netflix and all over the planet when it came out in 2016. And it's there for everybody to see. If somebody finds themselves in an unwanted situation, it's a multi-layered process. Because when I disassociated from my body so strongly at that point, while I was in this group, some part of me was able to ask myself the question of, how is this a lesson? How can I not take this personally? How can I take this whole thing that I find myself deeply enmeshed in such an amazingly unhealthy way that's so completely destructive recognizing I have to pull myself out of this. Some part of me at that moment also knew that like this was my life's path. This is actually not a problem. This is a lesson and a teaching for me to have with me, and for me to be able to get the depth of the spiritual understanding, which I did get from the teacher. He was legit in terms of opening up somebody's consciousness to spiritual understandings that most people only get through plant medicines. We did it through meditation. He was a guru, he was a revealer of light, but he was also massively destructive, and he was a very unhealthy human. Like his human was a train wreck. He was a hot mess, even though he did have some incredible teachings. And so I was able to take all of those teachings that I got and pair it with the understandings of the body, and pair it with all the anthropological and archaeological studies I've done, and all the dance training and the yogic trainings that I had, and I put it all together to ask myself the questions of like, okay, what am I here to do? And I'm here to share with people. Basically, I mean, I can say it with this crowd here. I wouldn't do it with other people. But, I'm here, it's like to put all of that together to show people how they can find that own deep, very deep, self-led spiritual practice through creativity.
Yes. First of all, I just want to thank you for opening up and sharing some of your experiences, particularly when it comes to, I think it can be very difficult to talk about something that feels so vulnerable. And I feel like it's such a strong and empowering thing to speak on that there are, there's no fault or flaw with somebody who finds themselves in that situation. It can be an unfolding of the path, and there to help grow and show you things about yourself, that you do have the strength. And it's just such a powerful story. I really appreciate you opening up and sharing that on the platform. It can be
Totally.
helpful and healing to so many people.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, if any unwanted experience with any group, it doesn't have to be a cult, it doesn't have to be a religion, it could be even one's family unit, right? If we find ourselves in situations where the body is having what other people would call reactions that we have to medicate ourselves to deal with, Prozac, Xanax, lithium, whatever the thing is. I was a total candidate for all those allopathic medicines, but I did not take a single thing because I knew my body was trying to do what any animal would do when it's trying to shake off an unwanted experience. It needs to get this vibration out of its system so it can recalibrate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This may feel like it's a little bit off topic. I'm not sure how controversial it feels to you or anybody else, but I've often wondered to myself about the current state of mental health care systems or psychiatric care systems, where we do seem to, at this point anyway, have a heavy emphasis on diagnosis and medication.
Yep.
And I get the feeling that it's really just it's suppressing symptoms that need to be heard rather than actually treating. And I know that might be like like a controversial hot take, and sometimes these medications can help be a preventative measure, you know what I mean, in certain cases. So I'm not trying to say that people should just stop taking their meds or anything like that, but
No, if you're on meds, you can't quit that stuff cold turkey because it'll.
right, that's I'm not suggesting,
Yeah.
anything like that, but talk to me a little bit about the art therapy and the art expression, because I feel like humanity at this time is reaching for a better way forward to work with mental health care, and to work with, when the body, we've gotten to the point where the body is feeling distress. What are the alternatives to medication that can be effective, and especially in extreme cases?
Yeah, it's great that you asked that question. I find myself in so many communities that are talking about that, that have those kinds of solutions. So for me, talking about that just feels totally normal. Whereas if I was with some kind of allopathic psychiatrist or psychologist, then it would be a much hotter topic that would be argued possibly.
Right.
So again, as a child, when I came out as a very, very small person, I remember being 2 or 3 years old and talking with God, having those conversations and knowing exactly what I was doing. And it would come out, and the answers would come out of my hands as art. You know, I knew if I was sculpting something or drawing something, that I knew intuitively, inherently, some information is moving to me, through me, and out of me. And my dad he didn't know what to do with it, but my mother, you know, as the intuitive mama, she knew that this cycle needed to happen, the creativity, so she encouraged it. And whenever I would get in a funky monkey emotional place, being a highly emotional young woman, she knew that if she just put me in front of my art stuff, it would calibrate itself. It would manage itself. And going to art school, I knew that I wanted to keep moving that energy because I felt the healthiest mentally and emotionally when I was creating something with my hands or doing something with my body. So eventually I found yoga because it was actually somebody in college. I was in a sculpture class, and this really awesome guy, I don't know where he's from, and I don't even remember who he was. He just put his hand on my shoulder one day because I was so high strung, just like so freaking over the top emotional. He just whispered him in my ear and handed me this pamphlet and said, I think you need to go to yoga. So I did, and I realized this is the first time I could have control over my emotional state. That these emotions, they just needed to come out. They needed to be expressed through the body, through a physicality. So that led me to, you know, that yoga did eventually lead me to my spiritual teacher that I had, you know, so down more of an Eastern path that way. And that's just the way it went. So that's the way it went. But I did have an understanding of those yogic practices even when I was the teacher. And when I came out of that cult on the other side, lead myself, and this will answer your question, it's going to bundle all in. You know, the question I asked myself, well, how the frick do I lead myself? And so I just had to go back to the very, very basics because I found myself at some point with quite a bit of debt, with like $2 and couple change in my purse and not knowing what to do, living in Hawaii. It's really expensive here. My mom was dead. My family had shattered. I have no place to go back to. I have nobody to turn to. So I asked myself the question that's like, okay, I have $2 left. What am I going to do? And my body said, please make art. So I thought, okay, you know, my body just saved me from this thing. I'm going to listen to it. And so I found a way to get materials and things together, and I started, you know, eking out a tiny little chicken scratch living, making some art things and creating. And in looking back now, I realized my body knew how to recalibrate itself through creating. So I created, and then it was just crafty stuff that I was selling and doing loads and loads of small jobs, cleaning houses, you know, gardening, that kind of stuff on the side. And at some point, I just drew a line in the sand, and I said to myself, well, now I really, let's be an artist. Let's make some art. Let's see what we can do with this. And so I did, and that urge and that longing led me to a bunch of personal and business development training, which then I learned to really start control what was going on here, understand, and forgive myself for this cake mix, you know, like what am I going to make with this cake afterwards? And at some point, I had a mentor challenge me to look at it. It's like, look, you're an artist. You had this experience. What's the purpose of this? You know, God, source, energy, it doesn't put us here on accident. Each and every one of us is like this beautiful miniature facet of the multi-billion, trillion faceted face of creation. And its desire is to express itself through the human.
Yeah.
So what I did is I took the things that I knew, which is as a child, I knew that energy was moving to me, through me, and out of me creatively. And I took the understandings that I got from the spiritual teacher of how to direct that energy through the centers of the body. And basically the training I got with my spiritual teachers, how to leave your body. So it was all like, you know, God and everything good is out there, and forgetting that here on this planet on Earth, we have this thing for a reason and it really needs to be attended to. So what I did with my own self-leadership, I started questioning and training myself like, okay, every human being on the planet does have a longing to know, why are we here? And at some point, something clicked, and I realized, holy crap, creativity is a doorway to God. Like, literally, it is. And I look into the world, and I see a lot of violence, and I see a lot of destruction, and I see a lot of little people, kids, having a really hard time right now. Why? Creativity and athleticism is suppressed. It's all arts are taken out of the public school. There's not a lot of art, visual arts, theatrical arts, music arts, or physical education. So any child that is struggling to express their emotions, it's energy, and it moves to and through their body. And whenever any young person is taught to suppress their creativity and their uniqueness, it's pushed down because adults don't know how to deal with it. Yeah. They're not given the training, right, to deal with it or understand or that it's healthy to express. Then it goes out sideways, drugs, alcohol, guns. Yeah. So that's part of what I do. And then with what you were saying, to pull it back in, to tie it up with what you were asking about the allopathic medicine. Mm-hmm. So why is there such a domination of this way of, here, just take this medicine so you don't feel all these feelings that you're feeling? Mm-hmm. Why do we do that? Because we don't know how to train these humans how to feel these feelings without it ripping them to shreds. For me to go back and to make sense of, oh my God, I was in a cult. How did I end up there? How did I end up in this movie that ended up on Netflix after being the kid that I had been? How did I end up there? The shame, the blame, the guilt, the living in a small tiny town in Hawaii, and everybody knows that I'm in this movie, that kind of cultural and community shame and all of that. How does one deal with that without turning to drugs and alcohol or turning to other forms where you're trying to suppress those emotions? And honestly, I turned to the healthiest form of eating I possibly could, the best forms of exercise I could possibly find. And I just knew that if I could direct and channel these panic attacks and channel all the depression and the anxiety, that it would shift. And I did it without allopathic medicine. Yeah. So it's possible to do. And if somebody does, because some people do need these medications so they don't take their own lives, so It doesn't get so bad. But what they get to find is other ways of releasing this energy from their vehicle, their body, so that they can slowly retract backward from that medicine.
So, speaking of the next generation and some of the problems that children and young people are facing growing up in the world today, as a parent, because at this time, you and I had chatted a little bit about the state of the public school system and some of the issues that just I personally had with as a parent, with young children in the school system. As parents, what are some of the things that we can do? Some of the signs maybe we can see in our children that some of these that emotions are happening, that there's something, and how can we help guide or facilitate the process for a young person who is having a difficult time processing emotions?
Yeah. That's a loaded question, because the answer comes, and I'll take it from two directions. I'll take it from the direction first of the child, and I'll take it from the parent, or the guardian, whoever is raising the young person. So if we look at our babies, and I'll preface this by saying I don't have children of my own, but I am an art teacher, and I teach ages 5 to 12 plus. So I am in classrooms, of my own classrooms, of kids that are going through this. So I can speak to that from that place, not from a parent. Every child is an animal. First and foremost, we are Homo sapien sapien. We are animals. And we have a very advanced brain that can think and imagine and dream and create, unlike most animals on the planet. So from parent looking at child, it's an animal. Animals, they move, they have to move, they have to be physical. Healthy animals, healthy baby animals, what do? If we look at healthy baby animals, they run around like little maniacs, they crawl up things, they tear stuff apart. They're animals. They're taught by their parents how to use their bodies. How do adult wolves train baby cubs? How do adult lions train their babies? How do birds train birds? How do seals train seals, right? For the animals where there is more of a pack or a group. So your baby is an animal. It has to learn how to use this thing. And every child that I know that is taught to have a bit of mastery over their physicality, it's easier for them to have mastery over this, and to direct that. And so there are lots of ways to do that through the martial arts, through dance, through music, through sports, whatever that is, to have some kind of physicality with that. I find that most of the kids that come through my camps or the other kids that I teach, the ones where I'm observing imbalances or them, what you would call acting out. I mean, if I'm going to be brutally honest, what are you feeding your child? What are you putting in your child's animal body? The body has no way of processing these chemicals we put through them. It does through acting out, through being so that those chemicals and those additives, they have to leave the system, right? So we get to be careful about what we're feeding our little animals, what we're feeding our little birds. Sometimes we have more control over that depending on how much money we have, or if we can have a garden or not, or what we have access to in our community in terms of what we're able to feed our children. And that's a whole another loaded conversation. But with parents that have hyperactive children or children that act out or kids that are, have really big mood swings, we get to look at, do they have access to a kind of physicality that will serve them? Do they have access to nourishing foods that will balance out their body chemistry and their hormones? So what's happening in the environment that's affecting their bodies? So that's one lens for little people. And then when they do have mood swings, when they are challenged, how do we teach them to acknowledge their emotion, release it in a healthy, productive way, and then choose something different? That's only possible if the parent knows that.
Yeah.
Right? So, and most parents they haven't been given that training, right? Because look at you, look at me, like what were we grown up with? I wasn't given that until I learned it, right?
Yeah, I would say honestly, for most parents, they don't know how to express emotion in a healthy way. And
so then that comes down to any parent that's out there that has the time and energy to put towards themselves, like, okay, how do I express my emotions separate from my family? How is it coming out? Do I know how to acknowledge what I'm feeling? And if it's an explosive emotion, we feel. If we're supposed to feel, we're supposed to emote. Do I have a constructive, healthy, productive outlet for the things that I need to get off my chest? And this isn't talk therapy. This is like this whole other realm of expression. Do I have support? Then can I turn around and support my little one?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's a fair point, is that, for a lot of people, it's not like you have to go get certified or get a license to be a parent, right? Parents are just kids that got older. So for a lot of people, there's a healing process of self understanding your own emotions, how to express your own emotions. That to your point, like, kind of has to come first, before you can really guide a child.
Yeah, when you get on an airplane, what does the flight attendant ask you to do? If the oxygen goes out of the cabin, who do you put the mask on first?
Oh, yourself. There you go.
You have to. You have to. And And it's like, no, to anybody that's listening, wherever you are right now, you know what you know because you know what you know. So there's no shame, blame, or guilt associated,
Yeah.
right? And for any adult here that might have children and you're struggling with your little ones, they have a lot of emotions, they have a lot of expression, and you need some support. There are a multitude of ways to get help and support and training. It doesn't mean you need to go sit in a cave in the Himalayas and meditate and do Om. Quite honestly, I would say that's the best way to bypass being a human. I don't recommend a lot of spiritual systems right now because there's so much mumbo jumbo, and it's just as bad as any church cult. But in that way, where we're taught to suppress our emotions and our feelings and our own creativity, and recognize that every cell of my body is actually God. And I don't need to believe in one person's way of doing it to know that divinity and source is seeking to express itself through me in that way. And there's a lot of different avenues that adults can take. I know of many avenues that adults can take to understand themselves and bring their children into those support structures too. Little ones, I know of multiple different organizations that hold camps for parents and children where the parents can go and learn about themselves while their children, little ones, are taught how to understand their emotions and express themselves. And then these little ones in turn then end up being teachers for the parents.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think all souls are both learning from and teaching each other depending on the different energy dynamics. So absolutely. If people are interested in looking up your art therapy, and where can let people know where they can find you?
yeah, I can give you some links to post if somebody's curious about what I do, because basically with my art therapy facilitation practice, these are programs that I teach where I help creative people. But you don't have to be a creative person. You can be anyone wishing to have more mental and emotional control and guide yourself in a new way. I train my clients how to accelerate their achievements or their desires or where they want to be next in life. And we set goals to do that, and we set goals in order to trigger our imperfect emotions, to trigger and bring the monsters and the skeletons out of the closet so that we can clean those things up as we go. And I teach my clients how to do that with some physiological things like certain kinds of breath work and EMDR and things like that to release stuck emotions from the body. And then we use the art therapy to get the brain to literally function in a new way, because it's so used to functioning a certain way that the brain needs to be rewired. We've got to go up here and clean up the attic a little bit. And then using visualization and creativity then to guide the mind to look for what's next, so that the body and the mind are ready and poised to go for what's next. So I teach these programs online in 90-day programs or 6-month programs or one-on-one, like I did with some of my clients today. And so I've got links to websites for that. And a lot of times here, what I offer for the people that I talk to like this, if anybody wants a consultation call, I have a free consultation for a certain number of people. So if somebody wants a breakthrough session to even figure out if working with me is even the right thing, and a lot of times I go through these breakthrough consultation calls and we come to the end and then I'm like, I'm not the right person for you, but XYZ is really what you need next to get what you need next in life. Because my services aren't the best for them, and then I give them a protocol and how to find the right next steps for them.
Sure. And I will post all those links in the description, so if people are interested, they can go click the links and check out Nadia Fairlamb.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much for being here and for joining me on the show. I appreciate you, and I applaud you for doing the work that helps heal and help guide other people, and for the courage to share your story and help others that may be in similar positions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if there's anything I can leave for any of you, if you're in a position where there's a lot of anxiety, depression, panic attacks, or any of those things, and you feel uncontrollable within your system, then it's just your body's way of saying, I got you, pay attention. It's just your body's way of saying something is off, and it's the infinite wisdom of the body saying something is off, go get some support.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Of course.
sharing, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Well,
And thank you so much for tuning in and listening and watching the show. I appreciate you so much. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. And we will see you guys next time on Spirituality. Thanks.